Greetings and welcome to an episode of the Hourlings Podcast Project. My name is Martin Wilsey and I'm your host. Tonight, however, Shay's going to be driving the bus. Take it away, Shay.
All right, you guys, welcome. Our topic for this evening is sensitivity readers, which is interesting because as authors, as contributors to the literary field, we live on the edge of modernity and the future, thinking about science fiction. And some of us live on the edge of modernity, antiquity, writing fantasy or historical or Jane Austen type stuff. But all of us are responsible to keep up with the times. And so one of those developments with the times of the 21st century, the 2020s, is that authors are more and more frequently experiencing a new layer of editing in their books. It's not copy editing or content editing, but sensitivity reading. And so for those who don't know what that is, a sensitivity read of a manuscript is when a manuscript is read by someone who is a member of a particular minority group. So for example, if you have a Black character in your novel, you would have a Black person read that manuscript to make sure that it is sensitive, hence sensitivity reading, to the Black community. Likewise for LGBTQ, disability, there's lots of different ones. And so I experienced this with This Is Not a Love Scene from St. Martin's Press. And it was my first time ever that I experienced going through a sensitivity read. It's definitely not like any editing experience I've had before. It was not like you receive your book back with red markups and comments in the margins. It was done sort of with my editor as the middleman. So I never directly spoke to the sensitivity reader. My editor was a middleman and brought up some issues in the book or some pieces of dialogue, just some sentences that maybe didn't come off quite right to that sensitivity reader. And I remember that I accepted, most of those comments, but there were some that I didn't accept. And that's where my questions come in to you guys. What do you think about, do authors have an obligation to accept all of the suggestions or red flags made by a person of a minority group who's reading your manuscript for sensitivity purposes? Or was I in the wrong, maybe, to push back and reject some of those flags or those suggestions? What do you think about that?
I guess I'll go first. As far as sensitivity readers go, I rely on my beta readers to, just have a reasonable read. I don't make any efforts to go out and find specific groups to, read sections of my book to, to homogenize it in any way. But I do have beta readers. If beta readers find that I'm being, over the top about something, they will happily tell me. My wife is one of these readers, and she has said to me, Marty, you cannot have this page in your book. You just gotta delete this right now. So in reality, the beta readers that I have, have their own sensibilities and can identify racism or any kind of bigotry or sensitivity about stuff. But I don't specifically entertain designated sensitivity readers as the modern nomenclature goes for that.
But how about going back to the question, do you think that authors who do seek that out are obliged? Is there a line of...
So I'll kind of address that.
All right.
As an author, I think my goal is to write the best possible story that I can, right? I'm not trying to offend anybody. I don't have an axe to grind with regard to Black people or Asian people or handicapped people or anybody else. So first of all, from a motivational perspective, I'm not trying to offend anybody, right? Now, I wouldn't hire a sensitivity reader per se, but I have, like Marty, I have beta readers. I have my writing group that critiques things, and I have subject matter experts on different things. Marty is typically my subject matter expert, so I don't make a fool of myself when it comes to guns and gunfighting, right? Uh, I have other SMEs for other different types of things. If I included a handicapped person in my story who was in a wheelchair, I would probably talk to Shay to try to make sure that I was getting some of the details right. That's not so much sensitivity as in, if I want to portray somebody realistically in the story, I want to do my level of effort to try to get the details right. Now, in one case, I did a story with a Black character who was a friend of the main characters in the story. And I did some fairly comical, humorous things with that. And I knew I was pushing the edge a little bit. And so I did solicit a couple of my friends who were Black to take a look at the story and just tell me, hey, look, you know what I'm trying to do. You know I don't have an axe to grind. Am I pushing a limit here? Have I gone over the line? Just let me know, right? And they're like, and they came back going, no, this is hysterical. So, I kept the story as it was. So, sensitivity reader, again, if a publisher commissions somebody else to critique your book for a particular thing like sensitivity, I think it's a judgment on every single thing that person says. And you don't know that person's background or how well they know their field, or how perhaps overly sensitive they are about certain things.
Yeah, that's a very
So
fair.
to directly answer your question, Shay,
Yeah.
I would say no. The author should have final say on what's published on his behalf. So the answer would be no, they're not obliged to. The thing is they got to know their audience, though.
Right.
So I totally agree with Dave's statement where you're trying to craft the best story you can.
Right.
And if using a sensitivity reader will get you a better story, then I'm all for it. It's the same exact reason I use beta readers.
Yeah. In my case, I knew I was pushing some limits, and I really wanted somebody to tell me, was I going over the line? And I don't think I did.
No, you didn't. It was a great component of that story. It made it real.
Jeffrey, what do you think on the subject?
Well, I mean, this is a complicated issue, no doubt. And I will say this. My biggest concern isn't, I could ask, say, an African-American or a lesbian or someone else to read one of my stories, or someone who's handy capable. And, they could tell me, change this, change this. Okay, that's great. And, generally speaking, I will. I will take that as SME input and say, yeah, that's good. But I will draw a line, like everyone else here, and say, nah, that changes the basic operation of my character. That is beyond what I think would be conceivable with the way I conceive this character. But the thing I worry about is this, and it's something we can't control, because even if I write a lesbian woman in my story, and I get the approval of a lesbian beta reader, there will still be potentially a lesbian that comes out and hates my story because I got it all wrong. Or someone who is African American hates my story because I got it all wrong in their perspective. And now what happens? One, they may write a bad review. A 1 star, okay, fine. That's your 1 star. My book wasn't for you. I'll just ignore it. On the other hand, and this is what I worry about now modern day, they go on Twitter and they start maligning, and then their posse starts maligning, and then their posse starts maligning, and their posse and their posse. And I go to bed one night and I get up in the morning and there is about 1,000 tweets insulting me. Those Twitter storms, the cancel culture, that is what I worry about. But I don't think that we as writers should concern ourselves with trying to placate them. We should just write.
A very good point that you bring up, Jeffrey, because I think all of us here are aware that it is a very hot button issue. And it is something that we're all concerned about. We're all conscious of. But you're right. It is something that if you do get it wrong, there is the risk of experiencing significant pushback, often personal, targeting criticism towards your character, which is a difficult thing. So it is definitely a development in the literary world that is, I want to use the word necessary. Is that a little too strong, maybe? To prevent, if you're seeking if you're seeking the best chance at preventing that kind of feedback, that might be a necessary development. So
I would like that.
what?
I would use that. If somebody suddenly posted 1,000 one-star reviews for me because they activated a whole bunch of people, I would start an advertising campaign. I would lower the price to 99 cents, start an advertising campaign and say, read it, find the truth yourself.
Yeah, that's an approach. Or
Yeah.
a controversial.
Yeah, well, that's like a whole nother topic, how
Yeah.
to deal with trolls.
But
when
I
you're an
think
author.
that
Right.
I think also
But being sensitive about stuff, especially, I sit there and think about it because there is a massive amount of violence in my books. There really is. I mean, it is over the top, murder, mayhem, and people that are sensitive about murder and mayhem just really gotta, take care of their own selves, because you can't have, I've seen some authors put trigger warnings on the back of their book and stuff like that. I just can't do it. It's like,
Well,
unless,
I think not just trigger warnings. I think your blurb and your cover and stuff should kind of give the individual the genre of the book. And so if they're looking for hot, steamy shifter romance, then Marty's futuristic space opera war story is maybe not the one.
yeah, not the right ballpark there.
yeah, I mean, so for those who don't know, the initial is TW, means trigger warning, and CN means content note. And I'm a part of some Facebook groups where the rules of the group is that you have to post that before every post, no matter what. If it's happy, sad, whatever, you have to give people a heads up as to what it is. And these are some various support groups or whatever community groups. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely a trend that has developed. Is that some writers are starting to flag or tag their material with TW or CN. But I think that goes back to the whole, why don't books have ratings question? Like, why aren't books rated like movies are, like R or PG-13?
Well, I mean, I would hope that they would be more context specific than the R thing. I mean, they did try with television to get a little bit more specific. But I will say this. I mean, The Time of the Kevins as it exists now, probably when you're watching this, does have a scene that borders on, or at least rape. I mean, the rape does not go through, but yes, there is a rape scene in it. And if a woman has been through that traumatic PTSD-inducing situation, then maybe she should be warned that this is coming up, that she might be re-triggered by that. I understand, and I want them to be sensitive to that.
That's the benefit of having, like you said, like on TV, they'll have like MA, and then they'll say, sexual violence, language, whatever. So
Yeah,
you just have an
Netflix
idea
does
about it.
that.
What's that? I'm sorry.
Netflix does that. It's very accurate about.
It's really interesting. I when my kids were little, I was very paranoid about the stuff that was available on my television. So the TiVo box that I had very detailed content blocking, so that you could, not just by movie rating, but actual content types in there. It was very specific. It had flags if there was, rape or drug use or blood or, medical all this really weird stuff in there. And so I use that very in detail. It was imperfect. A few things still snuck through that my kids, saw and had nightmares because of. But it's really interesting. I read later that it turns out that those categories are by far more often used by people that want to find the movies that have rape scenes in them. It's like,
Okay.
so if they put trigger warnings on books or
Yeah.
categories, if you can go in and search your, Kindle library, Kindle, offerings, TW:rape, so that you can find books that have rape scenes in them. That's not cool either. So I'm not doing any of that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't necessarily oppose the idea of like rating books the way movies are rated. I just think it's very impractical. It would,
Yeah.
I mean, just the amount of, I don't even think it's possible. How many books there are in the universe, and how many, I don't know, whatever. I don't think it's it's practical, but I do think that, if you are a concerned reader and you have, like Jeffrey said, been through an experience that you really are working on self-care and working on distancing from, there are lots of resources to go to forums or, online to see if what's to do with this book. And a lot of them are also religious. I know of a couple websites that are like, Christian moms who read stuff or watch stuff at first and then talk about, whether this is good or where you should skip, what exact, parts you should skip, whatever. So there are other resources out there for you if you are a listener of ours who is, concerned about that in your reading.
Well, I think with movies, ratings were done by a separate third-party organization.
Yeah, the MPAA.
That's not viable with books. Now, you could self-rate your books, and
who would
that's
trust
what the
you?
comic industry did for a long time.
Yeah, no one would. I mean, I wouldn't trust an author that self-rates. Anyway, so that's an interesting debate, and it's not a new one. It's been around, so it's kind of fun to revisit.
Yeah, when we talked about this topic, I was thinking about an email I got from a reader who was basically sensitive about curse words. And she actually counted all 157 F-bombs that I dropped in one of my novels.
So she paid more attention
Military
to them.
science fiction people.
Right.
So she paid more attention to them.
It's really funny. She counted them. I had to go back into the Word document and do a search on the word, and she actually caught every one. I was very impressed.
I mean, impressive, but also like she spent more time on that she needed to, as someone who's sensitive to curse words.
I tend not to use them that much, except for one story in which it was the word one of the characters used as an adjective, much like Samuel L. Jackson.
And then I will say that in my book, not too much of the F-bomb, not too much of the S-bomb, but a lot of the enculé fils de champ merde.
Oh,
those aren't even bombs anymore, I would argue.
Yeah,
as language progresses, other words take it over, and the F word is like not even that right.
Yeah, just go watch Big Lebowski.
Oh, and George Carlin, his 7.
Yeah.
Nah, it's not 7 anymore, buddy.
But back to sensitivity readers, I think another reason why going back to the first question, are authors obliged to accept everything, or why sensitivity reading is not an absolute, why a sensitivity reading report, I should say, is not an absolute piece of material, is because it's not fair or realistic to expect one person from a minority group to speak for the entire minority group.
Yes.
And that's something that is, I think that it'd be racist to take one person's piece of opinion.
Because reading is so subjective.
Mm-hmm.
That's why it's really important to have multiple beta readers.
Mm-hmm.
Because you want to get different sensibilities of people that are reading your stuff. So yeah, just one. It's like,
well, there's also another factor sometimes too, and this happened to me once where one person, a relative, thought that one of my stories was a little bit over the top when it came to a Black person in the story, and I think it was more of a case of him being overly sensitive about not touching that particular issue. And so you get a little bit of that too, where it's not the it's not necessarily the minority that's impacted. It's somebody who's worried that the minority might be impacted, and they can be sometimes overly sensitive as well.
I will say this.
It's a weird
and this may be
effect.
It is.
Going out on a limb a bit, but as I mentioned, cancel culture, what the strangest, weirdest thing about it is, usually it's not the minority that's complaining the loudest when you're getting killed with cancel culture. And that's the weird thing.
Yep, I'm definitely against cancel culture because I believe in growth, and I believe in he who is without sin cast the first stone. I believe in all that stuff. So even though this topic talks about the responsibilities we have as authors to make sure that we're not being intentionally offensive, we're not targeting any particular group. Those are, of course, responsibilities that we have. But that doesn't mean that I'm saying that we have the responsibility to kowtow and cater to the fear of being canceled, or the fear of
Don't.
pushback. Just the opposite, actually. We are authors.
Stand firm.
We a big military rallying call. We are authors. We say the stuff. We get out there and we have confidence in what the voice that we want to put out there. So I definitely believe in also going forward with a sense of confidence and not paying too much attention to the sensitivity standard.
Well, I will add to that just a little bit. If somebody writes me a polite and honest email about why they were disturbed by something in one of my stories, I will take an honest look at it, and if I have erred in some way that I can alleviate without impacting my story, then I'll do my level best to do it, because I'm out to write a good story. I'm not out to offend somebody or to hurt somebody.
Sure, absolutely.
And in my writing, which may veer a little bit too much on the progressive side of things, I will try to be as open and cognizant of the modern culture and the modern ways of LGBTQ positive and all that stuff. So of course I will be hurt if I have gotten that wrong, but I will do my best to get it right if I have been told.
Yeah, but I think what we write, since we're all mostly science fiction and fantasy writers, I think Shay has done a few other different areas. Let's take for instance the idea of an LGBTQ person in a semi-medieval second world fantasy, i.e., something not based on an ancient Earth culture.
Right.
It's completely up to the details of that world how, for instance, gay people might be treated in that world. And I love stories about underdogs, so it's very likely that if my protagonist is a gay person in a world like that, that I'm going to stack the decks against them. It's not because I dislike gay people in any way. It's simply a story artifact. You pile adversities on top of your characters and let them deal with it. So you may legitimately have a fantasy that is presenting a certain ethnicity or gay people or whatever with a certain problems. Wouldn't be doing that to make some kind of political point, but more for story entertainment value.
I will. That's a great point, David. I totally agree with you. I will add a little bit of a funny story, which I hope I'm not repeating myself. If I am, it's a good one, so maybe it's worth it. But some of the critique that I got from my novel, my traditionally published one, was and the novel has a protagonist who is in a wheelchair, with a very similar, if not the same, disease that I have. And off that character went, gallivanting and having a story, whatever. And a lot of the critique that I got was from other disabled people saying, you got it wrong. You don't know, you're being insensitive. You're being offensive to us. And I'm just like, oh, wow, maybe I should have done a sensitivity read for disabled people as a disabled person. It's just,
I know.
There's just nothing, it's just, and I don't have any regrets. and I wrote it exactly as I wanted to write it.
Well, I think I take the opposite tack. I don't see. Okay, an old girlfriend of mine once complained that she read short stories and not novels. This was back in the 80s, because she grew up believing that girls couldn't be heroes because there weren't any novels about them, right? And so she found short stories, and there were at least some short stories that featured girls as heroes. So I think that one of the things as authors that we want to be doing is demonstrating that anybody can have an adventure. A gay person, a Black person, an Asian person, a handicapped person, somebody in a wheelchair, right?
Yeah.
And you've done that in your story.
Yes, you have. You
Absolutely.
did a very good story.
Oh, thank you.
Very good story.
Don't make me blush. Come on, the camera's on. I got all the light on and everything.
Hey, look, she's turning red.
I know, just like Marty does.
Yeah, just like, yeah, for once it's not Marty.
Yeah, for once, my camera's functioning properly.
Well, these three gentlemen next to me, I hold in very high esteem. So anytime they compliment me, it really does mean a lot. So I do appreciate that. But yeah, so it's just times change and developments happen, and you might find yourself, if you're going through the traditional route, you will almost certainly find yourself experiencing a sensitivity read. And as a self-published author, that's a decision that maybe you'll make. If you think it's something that would benefit your story, if you think it's something that is necessary with the content you've written, that's an option that's available to you now that really wasn't a thing very long ago. So it is definitely an interesting topic. Do you guys have any other?
I don't look at myself as a self-published writer. I'm published by Tannhauser Press.
Ah,
Yeah.
no. There you
Those are
go.
a great publishing house. I do agree.
Yeah.
No, I will say that don't be brash about it either. Don't just ignore, say, oh, whatever's, I'm the best writer. But also don't get frightened by it. Do your work. If you feel that this character, this incident does not maybe gel right with person of a minority community, try and get them to beta read. Try and get a member of them to beta read. But do not get wrapped around the axle that you might get thrown into cancel culture. You can't live your life like that. Live your life, write your book, because I want to read it.
That's a great point, Jeffrey. And I do fear that, if we continue down that path much further, there is some opinions going around now that authors should never write protagonists that are not, their ethnicity. And I definitely don't agree with that.
So I write science fiction and fantasy.
Yeah.
I have characters who are animals. I have characters who are, combat dogs raised to intelligence. I've written white people, Black people, males, females, aliens, and an AI. Right?
Yeah,
how can I be a science fiction writer and not do
The
that?
people say you can't write outside your lane. That's silly. Those people that say that are they're just silly. I just can't even take them seriously, really. It's fiction, and that's what we do, and we make stuff up.
You all have permission from me specifically to write someone in a wheelchair. I give it to you. I grant you, with my power, you are go forward and multiply with your books. Disabled people.
Let me take you up on that.
Well, it's funny you should say that. My last novel, one of the main characters was a full quadriplegic.
There you go.
She didn't even have arms and legs.
Wow.
Man, that's past my wheelhouse.
And people love that. The feedback I got from that book was just absolutely fabulous.
Anne McCaffrey did a whole series like that, the Ship Who Sang and all of those books.
Yeah. So, been there, done that. And it's fun. I like swimming outside my lane.
So Marty, so yes or no question. Would you use a sensitivity reader?
No.
David?
I would use beta readers. That's it.
Mostly beta readers, but if I thought I was doing something that was a little edgy, I would seek somebody of the right persuasion, I think, to at least take a look at it for me. I've done that once. I haven't felt the need to do that again. I might in the future. It depends.
Jeffrey?
And you know, like I said, there is an attempted rape in my story as it exists. So I might ask a survivor who can stomach it to say, have I drawn a line? Have I crossed the line? Have I gone too far with this description? And you know, other things. I don't think I'm going to get a Frenchman though to beta read. I've lived in France. I know enough about things.
And for me, I would say I always do it when it's the publisher's, you know, requirement. I never object to that. If it's my own call, my answer would be not necessarily. It would really depend, you know, book by book. So that's all I got for you. It's a cool topic. Maybe we'll talk about it again sometime.
Yeah.
But you know, leave your thoughts in the comments. I'm sure that maybe this will be the one that, like, you know, goes viral and everyone's fighting in the comments or something like that.
Yeah.
Rabble rouser.
Guy in the blue shirt, man.
Our two listeners are, you know, going to start hating each other.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah, I think we have a few more than that.
I know I'm being very self-deprecating. We are very, very famous and popular. Thanks for tuning in. This was a fun episode, and stay classy, San Diego. What do we do, Jeffrey?
Right, another finely structured episode.
Okay, there you go.
Okay. Ciao.
Bye.